the gap in functionality, and so that's just tremendous value that you bring to whoever a future employer might be. Differentiated apps, by that we mean taking advantage of live tiles, right? On the phone, you can actually have your app be available on the lock screen, also on Windows 8. There's the ability to build applications that take advantage of the web camera and do things with the lens, integrated wallet. Of course, if you're a game developer, there's an opportunity to be branded Xbox, right? So we work with independent game developers, game studios, and if you can always reach out to the Xbox team and say, hey, could you take a look at my game? And if they like it, they license it, you get to brand, you get that nice little Xbox green bar across the top of your game. That will push more downloads than anything else, is that, that little sort of attaboy from the Xbox team. So you'll drive a lot of attention to your app if it's tagged with Xbox. So I'm going to dive back into Visual Studio in a bit. What I want to go over is building apps that use these open data APIs. We've discovered that mobile developers who are learning to build for the various mobile devices that are out there, a lot of times you need some ideas. And open data APIs provide you a ton of ideas. I don't know if you've ever been out to this site. Let me go to apihub.com. You go to apihub.com, and you could search or you could browse by category. They've got over 13,000 open data APIs registered here. So if you're looking for data, because the data is really what makes an app interesting, right? And so if you're interested in building an app for healthcare or education, or you want to use government data, you want to integrate maps into your mashup app, this is the place to go and at least get started finding what you're interested in. So I want to build an educational application. I want to use REST protocol. I like it to return JSON because that's and there I've got the Khan Academy has an API, Donors Choose API, Google Books API, TED API. Hey, you're starting to get some great ideas. I'd like to build a TED app, right? So maybe I want to mash that up with Bing Maps or Google Maps or something like that, right? To create a really interesting application. The data is what makes it interesting. So learning how to develop against these open data APIs is another very marketable skill. Once you've identified, where do I want to go? Let's go here to Mashery. Mashery is a partner of ours. They're what's called an API curator. Go ahead and sign in. They've got over 50 APIs that they helped customers build and host. And one of the ones that I've worked with is Rotten Tomatoes. So I've just logged in. You can see all the different API keys I have. So once you start to work with these open data APIs, there's some things you need to know about them. Many of them require you to get a developer key. Usually doesn't cost anything. You just have to register, and then they give you a key. So for example, if I go to the dynamic documentation here for Rotten Tomatoes, which is movie information, I've logged in so they know what my key is. And I've just selected my developer key. And now I can use this API Explorer, which is in the browser. It's just a browser app. And I can say, okay, I'm interested in building an app using the in-theaters data. Let me go ahead and try it. I want to see how this works. So I try it out. And what I see is, let me zoom in here. You can actually see what the API that they just fired, what it looks like. It's a URL. and it's got some parameters on it, and it ends with my developer key, so they know that who's making this call. And they send you back, what the data would look like, which is right here. So again, I'll zoom in so we can see it a little better. This is the data coming back, and it's coming back as JSON, JavaScript object notation. So why does it do that? Well, APIs that are on the internet are architected to return very chunky data. Think of this. If you wanted to write an app that went and built a list of movies that someone could go see in a theater, would you want to make a call and say, okay, give me a movie, and that's one call. Now make another call, give me the second movie. Now give me the third movie. And you're doing that on the internet. And you know how internet connectivity is, we're only at the very beginning of what the capabilities of that are from an infrastructure perspective. It's not always perfect. It's not always fast. It's not always there. So chunky data makes a lot more sense. Go get me 16 movies, all right, at a time, or 20 movies at a time. And not only that, not just the name of the movie, give me the title, the year, the rating, give me a critics' consensus, give me the release date, give me a synopsis, give me movie poster thumbnails. So it's pulling back a ton of information. Who are all the actors in the film? Right? That's chunky data. That way you can make one API call on this, not very reliable internet connection, get back a lot of data, and now use it in the app. That makes a lot more sense. So this is the classic, they used to call it chunky versus chatty. Right? We want our open data APIs to be chunky. Another thing you need to be aware of about these APIs is they are sometimes throttled, which means the folks who are hosting these APIs, and they're providing all this data for free, you get a developer key, but they might tell you you can only make 2 calls per second and no more than 10,000 calls a day. That might be one level of threshold. Another one might be you can make 5 calls per second, but you're limited to 100 calls a day. And if you want to do more than 100 calls a day, you need to pay us, right? So there's those kinds of scenarios as well. So do your research into the APIs you're interested in using, determine if they are bottlenecked in any way, if there's a threshold, a cap, is there a cost, what do you have to do to get a developer key? But then once you figure that out and you say, yeah, this is a reasonable API, it's open, it's free, it's not throttled, I can build an app and I can get 1,000 people using my app and all calling that API, and I shouldn't exceed any threshold. That's kind of where you want to be to leverage these APIs. So I found my API. I'm happy with the threshold limit. Now I want to build an app. So the place to start. When I go ahead and run this application, at least you'll see what it looks like. Then I'm going to come back and we'll walk through it. We'll probably set some breakpoints. So another thing I'm pointing out here, this is the Windows 8 emulator. So this is another way to run and debug your Windows 8 app. So we have a phone emulator. We also have a tablet emulator that's built into the tools. So you can run the app. I could run this app locally on my machine, but I could also test it in this simulator. So again, I can make sure that I could simulate touch, and I could change the resolution. That's another nice feature of this. Windows runs on a lot of different devices. You want to make sure that if you're building an app for Windows, that it'll work on anything from the size of a Surface all the way up, to one of these. Right? So built into the simulator is the ability to change the screen resolution, so you could actually see if your layout is working regardless of what monitor the user happens to be using. So here I am. I just made that API call to Rotten Tomatoes, and I got back a bunch of movies which are in theaters, and I could select one of those movies, And now I can see, before I got a thumbnail of the poster, now I can actually see this movie poster, and I'm getting the synopsis and the rating and the audience score. So I pulled that data all the way back, right? So it came back, it's in my app. I'm now working with this data completely locally on the device. And I could say, now I'm interested in some reviews. Now I'm going back out to the internet. As soon as I said I want to look at some reviews of this movie, what Rotten Tomatoes gave me back was a link to another API that I can invoke to get a list of